This Torah class is brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.
For the Yom Tif of Sukkos, Haba Aleinu L'Taiva, we know that we add in the Berachas Hamazon of Sukkos, we add a tefillah, Harachamon, Yakim Lanu, as Sukkah as David, Hanoi Falas. May the Merciful One establish for us, set up for us, the fallen Sukkah of David. And the question is, while the Beis HaMikdash maybe is sometimes referred to as a Sukkah, the fallen Sukkah, but of all Yamim Tovim to be mispalel for the building of the Beis HaMikdash, it would seem unusual. We're not mispalel on Pesach, Hashem should build the Beis HaMikdash, not on Shavuos, not even any other Yom Tif. So why specifically Sukkos? It would not seem to have any specific connection to Binyan Beis HaMikdash. And why is this the central tefillah of the Yom Tif of Sukkos? Also, interesting Mishnah Berurah. Mishnah Berurah says in Siman Tafresh Lamed Tes of Katan Beis, the Mishnah Berurah quotes for us the advice of the Shlach HaKadosh. Says the Mishnah Berurah, Ulefi shekedushas hasukah gedoyla ma'od, because the sanctity of the sukkah is very great. Roi lamayit ba b'divrei chayil, one should diminish, one should minimize his discretionary speech. Uledaber ba ki'im kedusha utayra, and speak only sanctity and only Torah. So it's a little bit of a contradiction. First he says to diminish your discretionary speech, and then he says only speak Torah and Kedusha. Well, if I'm diminishing, then the answer is you're not supposed to speak too much of it ever. So when you're diminishing it, you're removing it completely, right? Don't think when the Mishnah Berurah says to diminish it, he means a little less. To begin with, it's very little. Who wants to waste their words on discretionary speech? So you're mamayit it, and now should you say nothing? No, only divrei kedusha and Torah. The kol shekain, and certainly she is zoyer meladaber sham lashon hara urechilos ushar diburim ha'asurim, and certainly don't speak lashon hara. Now, the Chavetz Chaim, we don't wonder why he took the opportunity to warn us against lashon hara. I mean, after all, Chavetz Chaim, right? But what is the specific connection to not to speak divrei chayil in the sukkah, not to speak lashon hara? You can never speak lashon hara in rechilos. Elamai, it's worse in the sukkah. Okay, not a good idea to speak lashon hara at any Yom Tif. Not a good idea to speak lashon hara at any Suda. It's not a good idea to speak lashon hara. Why does the Chavetz Chaim take a specific focus to warn us against speaking lashon hara in the sukkah? Now, the Reb Chaim Volozhiner had a Talmud. His name was Reb David Tevel. Reb David Tevel is the author of the Nachlas David. And in the Drashos to the Nachlas David reports to us that he heard a wondrous thing in the name of the Vilna Gaon. And that is, we all know that the mouth has 5 parts to it. There are 5 different types of sounds the mouth could make. The mouth could make sounds with its teeth. The mouth could make sounds with its lips. The mouth could make sounds with its palate. The mouth could make sounds with its throat. And the mouth can make sounds with its tongue. There are 5 emanations of speech. There are oisios that come from the teeth. There are oisios that come from the lips. There are oisios that come from the palate. There are oisios that come from the throat and from the tongue. So for example, the zayin, the samach, the shin, the reish, the tzadi are from the shinayim, from the teeth. Okay? If you don't have teeth, you can't say those words, those sounds. The vav, the beis, the mem, the pei, from the lips. The kaf, the fei, they come from, the chaf, the kuf, the gimel, yud, they're from the palate. They're from the palate. The hey, the ches, the ayin, the aleph are guttural, they're from the throat. And there are other letters that come from the tongue, dalet, tes, nun, taf. The word sukkah, each letter comes from a different part of the mouth. Samach is from the teeth. Vav comes from the vav comes from the what? The lips. The lips. The vav comes from the lips. The kaf comes from the palate. The hey is guttural. So each letter of sukkah comes from a different part of the mouth. Interestingly, there is nothing in the word sukkah that comes from the tongue. Every other part of the mouth is represented. Nothing comes from the tongue. Says the Vilna Gaon, that's because the sukkah emanates from the four parts of the mouth that guard the tongue. The teeth is a guard to the tongue, right? Why did Hashem make two fences for the tongue? To keep it closed. That's why it's a lock. That means unless you have a good reason, don't use it. It's like a rifle. If you have a rifle, I have it, so let me use it. No, the tongue is like a weapon. Don't use it unless you have a very good reason. And even if you're sure you have a good reason and you open the teeth, but you have another lock, you better be very sure that you need to use the weapon before you use it. And every part of the mouth is represented in the word sukkah except for the tongue. Why? Says the Gaon, the kayach of the sukkah is to bolster shmiras halashon, to bolster the guarding of the tongue. And in fact, it's a pasuk in Tehillim. Look at number 6. It says in Tehillim, Parak Lamed Aleph, Titzbenem besukkah meiriv l'shonos. God hides us in the sukkah from contending with our tongue. The kayach of the sukkah is a kayach of shmiras halashon. Your teeth are represented by the samach. Your lips are represented by the vav. Your palate is represented by the chaf. Your throat is represented. You are not represented. Your tongue is not represented. That's because it doesn't need to be represented. It needs to be closed. That is the kayach of the sukkah. In light of this Vilna Gaon, we understand better the Mishnah Berurah's advice in the name of the Shal HaKadosh, why it's so important not to speak Lashon Hara and Dvarim Tmeim in the Sukkah, and only to speak Divrei Torah. Because the whole kayach of the Sukkah is the kayach of Shmiras HaLashon, and that's the inyan of the Sukkah, that's the function of the Sukkah, and therefore, how could a person in the Sukkah use their tongue for the wrong thing? And, Rabbi Isai, I think we have a new understanding of the Tefillah, Harachaman Hu Yakim Lanu Sukkos Davar Nefas. Because if you look in the words of the Gaon, let's take a look at number 8 for a minute. Says the Gaon, Mitzvah Sukkah hi lahachniya yitzra de Lashon Hara. The mitzvah of Sukkah is to be machniya, the yetzer of Lashon Hara. V'hu, and that is, ki b'teva Sukkah, in the word Sukkah nimtzu by arba tevos. You have 4 words. Me'arba moitza ois hapeh, from the 4 emanations of the mouth. Samach, from the oisia zayin, samach, shin, reish, sadi, which come from the teeth. Vav, from the oisia bumf, which come from the lips. Kaf, from the oisia gich, which come from the palate. Hey, aleph, are the oisia, the hey comes from the aleph ches, hey ayin, which are from the throat. But there is nothing, there's no dalet, there's no tes, there's no lamed, there's no nun, there's no taf, which comes from the tongue. These 4 sounds, these 4 emanations, the teeth, the lips, the tongue, the throat, guard the palate, the throat, they guard the tongue, the shomer moisa, and they guard it, that a person does not break through. This is the meaning of the pasuk. Titzbenem besukai meiriv l'shonos. Says the Gaon. We know the Yom Tov of Sukkos corresponds to the final redemption. Then the cheda of Lashon Hara will be rectified, like the Mekubalim explain. But let's explain this very simply. We know Beis HaMikdash was destroyed because of Sinas Chinam. But the Chafetz Chaim writes in his introduction, it's impossible the Rebbeinu Shalom would just destroy the Beis HaMikdash because of Sinas Chinam. It must be referring to the Aveira that comes from Sinas Chinam, which is Lashon Hara. Chafetz Chaim even brings a proof. Because the Gemara in Yuma says, and we find the same thing, I believe, in Erchin about Lashon Hara, that Lashon Hara is equal to Avodah Zarah, Gila Rais, and Shvichas Dam. So if the second Beis HaMikdash was destroyed because of Lashon Hara, and the only thing that will rebuild the Beis HaMikdash then is if we correct the Aver of Lashon Hara, and what mitzvah does Hashem give us to be mechazek, shmiras halashain, sukkah, Mela through the mitzvah of Sukkah, or Mispalel, Harachaman, Hu Yakim Lanu, as Sukkah as David, Hanifas. Otherwise, what does the Beis HaMikdash got to do with our Sukkah? Well, because they're both called Sukkah. The answer is that through the mitzvah of Sukkah, that gives us the chizuk to rectify the Avera that destroyed the Beis HaMikdash. Okay. I want to add one thought I thought this morning, and that is, we know that the Rebbeinu Shalom, Ki B'Ka Hashem, God created the world with Ka, with a Yud and then a Hey. Yud is for Olam Haba, and a Hey is the Olam Hazeh. Hashem created this world with a Hey. Why do we say Hashem created this world with a Hey? The Gemara says, well, in this world it's very easy to fall down, fall through, fall out. The Hey is open on the bottom. It's very easy to fall out. But you can always come back through the opening. You can always do tshuva. But there's another reason. Why of all the icy do we say Hashem created this world with a Hey? Why a Hey? Why not an Aleph? Why not a Beis? Why not a Tzadi, a Zayin? Of all the letters in the alphabet, Hebrew alphabet, the easiest letter to say is the Ois Hey. You don't even have to move any part of your mouth. It's the only letter you could say without even dibur. Hey. You don't have to be a ventriloquist even to say hey, right? Hey! You don't. The Sukkah is compared to what? Which ice? Chazal say, Sukkah is 2 defanos and a little bit. Sukkah is the ois hey. That's brought down. Sukkah is ois hey. Like this world. Why? Again, because if the kayach of the Sukkah is to be mamaye dibur, and the hey is the one ois, which is kamat, not even dibur. That's why we say Hashem created the world with a hey. The limud of that is, it was nothing for Hashem to create the world. He didn't even have to. It didn't require any effort. It was so easy. It was like the ois hey. That's the meaning of that Hashem created the world with the ois hey. But again, the Sukkah is compared to the letter hey. It's not even dibur. It's imamayit dibur.
More than Aleph.
Aleph. Try saying Aleph.
There's no dibur.
No. Just say Aleph. You have to use three different parts of your mouth.
To say the word,
the letter, as opposed to the sound.
Right. Aleph. Right. The hey, you could say the letter. You could say pronounce the ois. Right. Okay. It's very interesting. We have a minhag on Hoshana Rabbah, the minhag of chibud arava. We smack the arava. People are very into this mitzvah. People are mamish mekayim it with great hislavos. They beat it to a pulp like 5 times. I thought v'chol hamar b'hareza meshubach is only by Haggadah. I didn't realize even by chibud arava, people take it. They take out all their aggravation the whole year on that poor arava.
Rabbi, you said the Olam Haba is created by the Yud?
Yud.
So, but if you try to pronounce Yud, I don't think it takes any more effort than a Hey.
Yud.
So why are we differentiating between the Hey and
Yud?
the Yud?
Sure. Say Yud. Dalet is what? Dalet is from the
Yud.
No comparison. Yud. The Dalet is one of the oisiyos l'shoniyos. The Dalet comes from your tongue. It's very interesting. What's the inyan of chibud arava? Why are you beating the arava? Why don't you take the esrog and beat the esrog? Why don't you pulverize the esrog? Put it in like a blender or something, Put it in the food processor. Or take the lulav, smack. Why of all things do we beat the arava? So you say, takanas go'inim. There's a Chuvas HaGo'inim from Rav Tzemach in Siman Shin Mem, who says, really an amazing reason why we smack the arava. We know the Dalad Minim correspond to the 4 parts of the body. The Esrog is the lave, the Hadassim are the Einayim, the Lulav is the spine, and the Aravis is the mouth. You say Rebbeinu Shalom, That's it. I did tshuva. I try to do tshuva on Rosh Hashanah. I try to do tshuva on Yom Kippur. But I have one problem. I keep on slipping. You know why? It's my mouth. So you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to smack my mouth until that's it. I'm not going to sin anymore with my mouth. Yitain be'afar pihu ulai yesh tikva, says an Eicha. If you want to stop sinning, the first thing, the last thing, the first thing, the main thing, is you have to know, stop it with the mouth. The mouth is the main machshon. The mouth is the main stumbling block. And finally, on the last day, when the gates are closed, and this is the last chance, okay, fine, enough is enough. We put our mouths to the floor, that's it. We commit ourselves, we're not going to do it again. That's the union of Chibur Arava on the last day of Sukkos. Look at number 10. He says, U'she'elasam le'inyan Arava shechoiftim oisa bekarka. Question regarding the Arava, that we smack it on the ground. Mahu, what's the Inyan? Hare chazina and the Arava doimel esfasayim. We know that Arava is like the lips. V'hi ba lechaper aleim. The Arava comes to atone for the lips. Mikanu lahala. Yitain be'afar piyu. From now on, Hashem, we put our mouths in the dust. Ula yesh tikva. Now, it's interesting. If I'm not mistaken, and we gave a share on this, the mitzvah of Sukkah is a skula for arichas yamim, for long life. In fact, the Ran, in his commentary on Chumash, possibly the Abarbanel as well, they bring down on the pasuk Chag HaSukkos Ta'aseh Lecha, that if you sit in the Sukkah this year, you'll be zoicha to sit next year. So they bring down a drasha, and an Indian that by sitting in the Sukkah one is zoicha to arichas yamim. In fact, Rav Chaim Falaji writes that the three walls of the Sukkah are like three vavs. Numerical value Chai 18. Also that the Sukkah brings arichas yamim. And according to what we're learning, we understand that the koyach of the Sukkah is the koyach of Shmiras HaLashon. And we know, Mi ha'osh, chafetz chayim, oyev yamim, lirois tov, that arichas yamim is a reward for Shmiras HaLashon. So now I want to bring in the following issue. You know, at the end of Sukkos, we're mispalo for rain. What's the connection between Sukkos and davening for rain? Why do we daven for rain at the end of Sukkos?
We do it in the beginning, except we don't want to have rain.
Mm-hmm. So wait a little bit. What's the Indian? Somehow we juxtapose the bakasha of rain for on Sukkos. Somehow Tfilas Geshem is tied to the Yom Tov of Sukkos. Why is that? Yeah, when it sounds like as soon as Sukkos is over, now we're ready to daven for rain. Why? Right? And in Chutz La'aretz, we're even sitting in the Sukkah on Shemini Atzeres. You're mechuyev to sit in the Sukkah. The Gemara says, what can you do? It's a Gemara. Gemara says, listen, you have to sit in the Sukkah. Shemini Atzeres. So what's the connection between davening for rain and the Yom Tov of Sukkos? So I want to tell you a very interesting Gemara. The Gemara says in Masechta Sanhedrin, Daf Kuf Yud Gimel, says the Gemara number 2. This is talking about a story about a man by the name of Chiel. Chiel built up a city. He called it Yerichai, and his children died. And Eliyahu and Achav came to Menachem Aval Chiel, and they were discussing why Chiel's children died. And the following suggestion was offered, that Yehoshua put a curse that anyone who builds up a city, even if it's a different city, and names it Yerichai, their children will die. And Achav was incredulous. He said that can't be the reason. Achav said that can't be the reason because the curses of righteous people don't come true. Because Moshe Rabbeinu said that in Kriya Shema, that if you deviate and you serve idols, v'sartem v'avadim l'kim achirim, v'chara af Hashem b'chem, God will be angry at you, and what will happen? V'yotzar hashamayim. Yeah, you're familiar with these psukim? You ever say them? Yeah? Yeah, you say these psukim. V'yotzar hashamayim is part of Kriya Shema, right? You say it twice a day. So that if you serve Avodah Zarah, Hashem's going to hold back the heavens. And Achav says, but that Hahu Gavra, that guy, meaning me, I serve so many idols, I don't even have time to serve all my idols. That's how much I serve my idols. Every single furrow in Israel has an idol that I set up. And there's so much rain in Israel, I can't even climb from one furrow to the other furrow. So, and if Moshe Rabbeinu's curses don't come true, how do you expect the Talmud's curses, Yeshua's curses, to come true? So Eliyahu Hanavi said, I don't like what you just said. So, I take an oath, and the oath was, Vayomer Eliyahu Tishmi Toshik Gilach Chai Hashem Elokei Yisrael Im Yeh Tal Umatar Ki Im Lefi Devari. There will only be rain according to my word. So Eliyahu said, I had enough, and he took a shvuah. There will not be rain. And in the Navi, in Malachim Aleph, it goes on to say how the Rebbeinu Shalom wanted to make it rain again. So the way he manipulated through a way where there was a certain child who died, and Eliyahu wanted to be Mechayim Esim, the child. So Eliyahu wanted to bring the kid back to life. Hashem said, look, there are three keys that I maintain sole possession of: the key of childbirth, the key of Tchias HaMesim, and the key of rain. You already took the key of rain. If I'm going to give you the key of Tchias HaMesim, you're going to have two out of the three keys. The student will have two, and the Rebbe, me, I'll only have one. So Eliyahu, you give me back the key of rain, and I'll give you the key of Tchias HaMesim. So Hashem gave Eliyahu Tchias HaMesim, Eliyahu gave back the key of rain, and then the rain fell. But not before Eliyahu gathered all of Klal Yisrael to Har HaKarmel, and all of Klal Yisrael shouted out, Vayar Yisrael, right? And they screamed out what? Hashem hu Elokim, Hashem hu Vayar Yisrael, Vayipla Pnem, Vayomru, Hashem Elokim, Hashem Elokim. And then the Navi says, a little cloud appeared. The cloud looked like the palm of a hand, and it started to pour. And that's what happened. That's the story. And the Chassam Sofer, in the Drashos Chassam Sofer, in Chelek Beis, in a hesped he gave on Reb Chaim Hirsch, on page Shinai and Vav, he has a lot of questions on this incident. Take a look. Look at number 3. Says the Chassam Sofer, he quotes the Gemara, that Achav said, if Moshe's curse didn't come true, how do you expect Yeshua's curse to come true? And Eliyahu swore there won't be rain, Kim Lefi Devari, and Hashem eventually brought the rain, but not until Eliyahu gathered all of Klal Yisrael on Har HaKarmel, and he was Mekadesh Shamayim, and he davened, and a small cloud came up like a palm, and the rain came. And the Chassam Sofer has 4 questions on this. Number 1, how do we answer Achav's Taina? Achav Tainad, if Moshe's curses don't come true, and it rains even though I'm serving idols, then how do you expect Yeshua's curses to come true? Number 2, what did Eliyahu mean? The rain won't fall, Kiyim Lafi Devarai, only based on my words. He should say, the rain is not going to fall. Why did he add Kiyim Lafi Devarai, only according to my words? Number 3, why, when it rained, was it necessary for Eliyahu to gather all of Klal Yisrael and Har HaKarmel and then have them cry out, Hashem Elokim, Hashem Elokim? Either let the rain fall, or let the rain not fall. And why was the cloud that came so small? If it rains, it rains. If it doesn't rain, it doesn't rain. What's the inyan of this little cloud? Says the Chassam Sofer, I know what you're thinking. If I were to ask you, where does rain come from? So you say, what do you mean, where does rain come from? There's something called there's this big fire, and the fire shines on a big body of water, and it causes the water in the ocean to evaporate, right? The name of the fire is the sun. And even though it's 93 million miles away, it shines on the ocean, and the water in the ocean evaporates, leaving behind all the salt, causing the water vapor to rise, and then condense and form clouds. And then Hashem made a big fan. You know what the fan is called? Wind. Because if it would rain on the oceans, it wouldn't do anybody any good. So the fan comes, and it blows the clouds on the dry land, and it rains. And then the rain seeps into the earth, and flows back into the ocean, and it starts again. That's what you thought. That's what they told you in school. But that's not the real place where rain comes from. Where does rain really come from? Rain comes from vapor, hot air. But not the hot air that you're thinking of. The hot air that come out of people's mouths. Like they say, it's just a bunch of hot air. That's what it is. It's hot air, it's hevel. When a person talks, it produces hot air. And that hot air rises up to heaven and forms clouds. And when the clouds are thick enough, it forms rain. But here's the problem. That when people... Now, it says, I'm sorry, even though there is a scientific process, but it is certainly started through our diburim and our hachana. Says L'chsam Sofer. We'll take a look at number 3. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 lines from the bottom. The hayois kain, hachush v'haseichel yoed. Experience and one's intelligence demonstrate ki im b'nei adam v'hahevel v'ha'edim ha'olam mehem, that if a person speaks words mehevel peh doiver nevala v'lashon hara u'rechilos, if a person speaks words of nevala, one speaks immodest words, one speaks lashon hara, one speaks rechilos, one speaks profanities. Hageshamim hamahavim mizeh hemam lechlachim mizuamas klipas avoinois upshomaima. Then the food that are produced from these clouds are tummy, are contaminated. In other words, if a person speaks lashon hara, if a person speaks sheker, if a person speaks by davening, that produces contaminated clouds. Those contaminated clouds produce contaminated toxic rain. And thereby it produces toxic food. And all the food that you eat, forget the pesticides, forget the antibiotics, forget the bacteria, it's contaminated from averos. And then you eat it and you ingest it, it makes you contaminated. And then you speak worse words. And then it makes worse clouds. And then it makes worse rain. And then it makes worse food. And then you eat the food and you become more contaminated. And then you speak worse lashon hara. And it produces a vicious cycle, causing the rain and the food and the people to become worse and worse.
What?
And therefore, the longer this process continues, the more the world descends and descends and descends until we could become so mushrash and chait that there's no remedy. So Hashem will do one of two things. Either v'yatzaras hashamayim, He has to stop the cycle where it cannot rain anymore. Because if it continues to rain, then this vicious cycle just builds and builds upon itself, and causing the people to descend further and further into tumah and contamination. Or the other option is, if Hashem is not v'atzaras hashamayim, the other option is v'avadat mehira. You'll have to self-destruct. And that's why Chazal say, Malkosh is, why is it called Malkosh? Shemal kashusein shel Yisrael. It breaks the stubbornness of the Jewish people. So either v'atzaras hashamayim and there won't be rain, or v'avadat mehira. Now, in the days of Achav, it definitely reached that level, where they were so contaminated that Hashem really should have withheld the heavens. But for whatever reason, the Rebbeinu Shalom didn't. But when Achav said those terrible words, that Moshe Rabbeinu's curse are now coming true, Eliyahu said, I had enough. From now on, we're closing down the heavens. Your words are so terrible and disgusting. You're going to destroy the world. We're closing down the heavens. And now there will only be rain, kiyim lafi divari. From now on, only my words will affect the rain cycle. Nobody else's words. Kiyim lafi divari. Only my words could affect the rain cycle. So when Hashem said, okay, it's time to make it rain, Eliyahu said, rain? Who's going to create the rain? Achav? No. Hashem said, Klal Yisrael. Whoa, Eliyahu said, then we better gather everyone together, and everyone's going to scream out, Hashem Hu Elokim, Hashem Elokim, and those words of Hashem Elokim, only those words will produce clouds, and only those words will produce rain, and that's why when they said Hashem Elokim, Hashem Elokim, a small little cloud the size of a palm came, and the rain came from there, because the rain only came from those diburim of Klal Yisrael that screaming out Hashem Hu Elokim, Hashem Hu Elokim. By the way, this idea that when a person speaks, it produces hot air and it produces clouds, is not only in the writings of the Chassam Sofer, but Rabbi Yonasan Eibeshitz also, as well, says the following. Says Rabbi Yonasan Eibeshitz in the Gemara says in Brachas, Amid Beis Amid Beis, Rava loy gazar ta'nisa b'yoyma de'iva. Rava would not make a fast day on a cloudy day. He said clouds represent Hashem blocking out our tefillah. Like the pasuk says, Sakoisa ba'anan lach me'avar tefillah. Hashem closed off with a cloud from the tefillos going through. By the way, says the Yaros Davash, says Rabbi Yonasan Eibeshitz, he says, woe to us that it says in Eicha about us, Hashem blocks out our tefillah with a cloud. What's the cloud? With what cloud does Hashem block out our tefillah? Says Rabbi Yonasan Eibeshitz, Hu edim behevel, it's the hot air and the emptiness. Sheyesh boi chet, hayoytze mipi ish ve'isha kol yoim. The words that we say, nonsensical words, ridiculous speech, words of gaiva, words of kas, words of aynas dvarim. Uveyichod sicha betela beveis haknesset. And the worst kind of cloud, when you see a really black cloud, you know somebody's been schmoozing it up in the shul. Umi kol shekei beis tefillah, and certainly during davening. Hakol hu oile ba'ava anan, it creates clouds, umoineya letefillah lalos, and it stops davening. So if you have a guy talking in shul, mind my own business. No, mind your own business. The problem is his talking is stopping your tefillah from working. So again, we see this idea that speaking words interferes with the rain cycle. So, Rabbi Isai, now we understand that when Sukkos is over, what did we just accomplish on Sukkos? We just perfected our dibur. We just titzbeneim besuka meiriv l'shainos. The mitzvah of Sukkah is the mitzvah that gives koyach to shmiras halashon. It helps us guard our tongue. The samach is from the teeth. The vav is from the lips. The kaf is from the palate. The hey is from the throat. They are all shomer the lashon. The mitzvah of Sukkah helps us in shmiras halashon. And we were chayvet the arava. We smacked our mouth on the floor. We said, once and for all, we're not going to sin with our lips anymore. And that's the inyan why dafka in the sukkah we have to be so careful only to speak divrei Torah, divrei kedusha, because it's the yom tov of perfecting our kayach hadibur. Now, what are we ready to daven for? Ready to daven for a new rain cycle. Until then, daven for rain. It might not be a good idea to daven for rain. All the rain is going to be coming from a peh, from dvarim which are not dvarim kedoshim. But the yom tov of Sukkot, after we've elevated, after we've allowed our koyach hadibur to flourish, now Rabbi Isai, now we're ready to be mispalel for a new rain cycle to start. We're able to be mispalel for harachaman hu yakim lanu and Sukkas David hanoifalas. And maybe we could suggest the following. We know there's a famous machlokes whether Sukkos are Sukkos mamish or ananei hakavod, clouds of glory. But maybe they're both true. That if we sit in the sukkah and we speak only in the sukkah, we sit in our Sukkos mamish and we speak divrei Torah, divrei kedusha, and we generate clouds, good clouds. Then we're zocheh to the greatest cloud of all. We're zocheh to ananei hakavod, the clouds of glory, clouds of kedusha, and we're mispal Yivon Shem should give us to the mitzvah of sukkah, arichas yomim, like Reb Chaim Pelagius says, the three vavs, and should give us geshem, give us parnasa, berevach for the whole year, and everyone should be gesund to hate. Yimali Hashem kol mishal seinu l'toiva.
You've just experienced another Torah class brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.